Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Doom Production Podcast. And as you probably know, over the past couple of weeks, we've had some really awesome guests, and this week is no different. Here we've got Mohit today, and he is going to be joining us. We're going to be talking about some of his films and what he's got coming out. And you just had a movie come out not too long ago with that you were in, which we'll talk about too. So, yeah, glad to have you on the podcast. It's great to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Yeah, I'm really excited. This should be a good conversation. Obviously, the film that you were referring to was Void Man, which came out about a year ago. So, yeah. Let's do
We're
this.
just on top of it here.
This podcast is very overdue, I feel, because I think was Void Man early 2022 or was it end of 2021?
It was Christmas Day 2021. But it was actually shot. It was actually shot in over the course, like on December of 2020 and January of 2021.
Oh wow!
So I spent in one entire year editing the entire film over the course of 2021, trying to reach the December 25th deadline.
Oh, nice.
And shot only in 2 months then?
Yeah, 2 to 3 months, like 2.5 months. I think we did go over into like February a little bit. And then like throughout the year, I'd shoot some like the inserts and close-ups and whatnot.
Wow, that's awesome.
Nice. Well, regardless, the movie's been out for a bit, and we've been meaning to meet with you. And we've been, pardon if you hear barking, it's this little dog
That's
right
fine.
here. We've been meaning to meet with you for. Oh, there she goes. We've been meaning to meet with you. Shh. Oh, there's a delivery man.
Oh no. She was just excited.
Yeah.
Some real VideoCon stuff.
She's also she's a big fan of Void Man and soap opera.
Oh yeah.
Anyways, we've been meeting. This has been long overdue, and we've been really looking forward to talking with Mohit. So why don't you introduce yourself to anybody that doesn't know who you are?
Yeah, okay. So my name is Mohit Subedi. I live in Sydney, Australia. I've made 2 feature films, a soap opera when I was 17 and Void Man when I was 19. I'm currently 20. Yeah, I don't know. I'm a fan of cinema. I've always loved cinema since I was 10 years old. And I think, my lifelong passion and goal in life is to become a filmmaker within the Hollywood system. Yeah, I guess that's my introduction.
Awesome. What kind of like starting out, what were some of the movies that inspired you into filmmaking? Are there any like picks you have?
Yeah, so the film I cite always is The Dark Knight Rises, because I watched that film on my 10th birthday, and I told the story before, but I went to the cinema and I sat down and I really needed to go to the bathroom. But I think we were literally just talking about this before the Zoom. I have this like big philosophy that when you sit down and like engage in something, you can't really get up and leave or like interrupt the process. And I was telling you guys, I watched Zack Snyder's Justice League one sitting, Void Man obviously one sitting. So I'm sitting here in the theater and I really need to go to the bathroom, and then the film starts. And I was 10 years old. I don't know why I adopted this philosophy at the age of 10, but I said, you know what? The film started, I'm going in, So I fought my bladder and I sat and I watched that 3-hour epic. But I mean, over the course of those 3 hours, it was like a mind-blowing experience. I was absolutely just completely taken away from the film. And it literally like changed my life. Like leaving that cinema, I was like, oh my God. And then in the car ride back from the film, I was with my brother and a couple of his older friends. They were mentioning Christopher Nolan. They were mentioning Christopher Nolan's name. And I took a mental note of that name. And then later on in the year, my brother sat me down and he said, hey, you need to watch Inception, like right now. And I was like, okay, sure. And he's like, it's by Christopher Nolan, like the same guy who made The Dark Knight. And like the concept of a director and the concept of like the artist who like curates the project and curates the product, that was not something that I'd really conceptualized at that age or really was aware of until I sat down and watched Inception and realized, oh my God, like this is like I've recognized the voice in the filmmaker. I recognized the voice in Inception that you could also hear in The Dark Knight Rises or The Dark Knight. And then from there, I watched The Prestige, I watched Memento, I watched Following, I watched every single Chris Nolan film up until that point. And it kind of just clicked with me that one person made these like series of films that like at first glance may not seem anything related to each other, like the Inception and The Dark Knight Rises. To a 10-year-old, you might not find any link between those two products. But then once you put the director into question, or once you realize that there is a person behind these films, that's when it all clicked. And then I identified the concept of the artist or of the director, and then I realized that is what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. So yeah.
It's sorry, I muted myself. Sorry.
All good.
It's cool that you mentioned The Dark Knight Rises, because when I watched Voidman for the first time, I think pretty early on in the movie, like right away, it blew me at the scope and the energy of the movie, of everything, all these moving pieces. And it reminded me of moments of like The Dark Knight Rises or The Dark Knight, like lots of montagey kind of bits or stuff like from Goodfellas or something.
Yeah.
So it's cool to see that you reference like that was a big influence for you, is The Dark Knight Rises, because I can totally see that in Voidman.
100%. I think I learned early on as well, making films, that it's very easy to, well, not maybe not easy, but it's very effective to pull from your inspirations and build off of that. So the films that inspired me, the Dark Knight Rises, or Goodfellas, or Godfather, or Magnolia. I don't know if you guys have seen Magnolia,
Yeah.
Paul Thomas Anderson. That film is a huge influence on Voidman. Like literally the 3-hour runtime and the pace and the like scope of that film. I watched that film, I think on like October 22nd of 2020, like right before I was about to shoot Voidman. And when I watched Magnolia a Friday night, and then the following Friday night I watched The Godfather Part 2 for the first time. So those two films just absolutely blew my mind. And after watching those two films pretty much back to back, I did the final rewrite of the Voidman screenplay, and I think I finally figured out the pace and like the sort of the tone, or like the intensity of the film. And then from there, I just I know I wanted to make this 3-hour epic. I wanted to make this big, grand, like all-encompassing film with these like giant universal themes and all these like different interpretations. And I wanted to just put everything into this film. And I mean, I ultimately spent, I think, like 2.5 years in total working on Voidman.
Wow.
And yeah.
What was that writing process like? I mean, because there's so many strands and things that you're pulling from, and there's so much happening in that movie. Like, I mean, can we dive in a little bit more on like what that was like writing the movie for you?
Yeah, so I started writing the film on July 6th of 2020, and I finished writing the screenplay. I believe it was, I want to say like November 19th, 2020. So it was about like five months or so. But it was an intense writing process. And there was the first half of the year, because so in 2019, in August, I released a soap opera, and that film comes out. That's my very first feature film. I'm 17. And it's this huge thing because I'm like, oh my God, I accidentally made a feature film, because a soap opera was never intended to be a feature. It was meant to be a short. And then, I put it together, I composed it all. I'm like, oh my God, this is 2 hours and 12 minutes. And I realized that I'm now a feature filmmaker, right? So then after that, I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to definitely make it like another film, obviously. And this is going to be bigger. This is going to be better. This is going to be everything. And I knew I was graduating high school in 2020. And so I knew that at the end of 2020, that would be my filming process, because there'd be like a 3-month gap where it's like the transitory period when everyone leaves high school, but, goes into university or TAFE or works or whatever. So I gave so then for the first half of 2020, I started to like think about what is this next film that I'm going to be filming at the end of the year, and the pressure was kind of on, because I was like, I need to think of something like quickly. And I was thinking and thinking and thinking. And I went through this phase where I would wake up and I would have this film idea and I'd think, oh my God, yes. And I would spend the whole day thinking about it. And then I'd go to sleep and I'd wake up and think, oh my God, that idea I had yesterday was terrible. Like, I'm not making that film. That's a bad film. And I was just this vicious cycle. I do that every single day until eventually I thought of this film about this, like, this vigilante, this person who has no real meaning in life, who then tries to kind of create meaning through just, you know, acts of heroism or vigilante. But then there's like a sort of a moral, like a questionable moral ethic to the film. And for some reason that idea stuck. And then the next day I woke up and I thought, yeah, that's actually, I want to keep exploring that, right? And I think this does also go back to what I was mentioning earlier, like the films that influenced me. Superhero cinema has like really inspired me. You know, when I watched Avengers Endgame for the very first time, that was like my favorite film of all time at the time. Or, you know, The Dark Knight Rises or The Dark Knight. I think the modern blockbuster is like a lot of, it's the films that a lot of people are introduced to at the beginning, and it's like often the most inspiring. And so I knew I wanted to make my own kind of blockbuster. So there was all of these elements kind of bubbling up from the surface, like from my childhood and from what I wanted to do. And I'm also a huge fan of long films. I don't know why, but I really got into long films over the course of 2020. Like I said, Magnolia, The Godfather Part Two. So all of these things just start to infuse, and then eventually July comes around and I turn 18. My 18th birthday is July 5th, and I realize, like, okay, I realized on my 18th birthday, like, yeah, Void Man is definitely, this is the next thing. So the next day after, you know, the celebrations, I sat down and I started writing. And my writing process is, I don't like to outline, I don't like to put the beats in, I don't like to know, you know. My writing process is, you just dive in head first, and I don't know what the next scene after the scene I'm writing is going to be, right? When I do write, I mean, well, the I always say the five things I know when I write is the opening scene, um, the end of Act One, the midpoint, the end of Act Two, and the ending. So those are the 5 points that I try to hit, but then it always changes and it's always up in the air. And the original ending of Void Man was like very different to what it ended up being. So I'm the person who likes to write without really knowing where I'm going, and I just like to let the story kind of take its course until it reaches a natural conclusion. And
That's
yeah,
awesome.
That's
love
cool.
that.
So going back to your superhero comments, really quick, what are your thoughts on people who say there's a superhero fatigue or a Marvel fatigue or anything like that? Do you have any opinions on the debate of, you know, superhero movies?
yeah. I mean, look, I definitely have opinions. I think, you know, I have opinions about a lot of things with the superhero, with the conversation around sort of superhero cinema at this moment. I think, I don't know. I think, you know, I think with most things in life, there's always going to be like the extreme of one thing and the extreme of the other. And the reality, the truth is that it's, you know, the truth is found somewhere in the middle. I think that there is a sense of like superhero fatigue that is setting in, especially this year. I think, you know, phase four of the MCU, I think, is like, phase four of the MCU was wrapped with Black Panther Wakanda Forever. But I think it's like double the runtime of phase four is like double the runtime of phase three and phase two and phase one. I think that the the superhero cinema is really sort of overtaking the market at this moment, and it's now bleeding into things like streaming. It's bleeding into, it's creating this monoculture that's like really demanding a lot, you know. And I think, I mean, like Black Panther Wakanda Forever, I believe it had like a 52% box office drop from its opening weekend to its second weekend, which was like, and it's not going to make $1 billion, right? Like that's the projected sales. Black Panther, the first one, it made $1 billion. It was nominated for Best Picture, and everyone was kind of, there's not a single Marvel film this year that is going to break $1 billion probably, which I think is very telling. It's like their first year in a while that has never achieved that. And so I think there are clear signs that there is like genuine superhero fatigue kicking in. I think the way to combat that, and I think the way that can be like solved, is that just by the the MCU can't be the single proprietor of superhero films. The DCU needs to like bring in their own kind of counterweight. There needs to be counterweight. There needs to be kind of healthy competition. I know you probably have a lot of thoughts on what's happening at the DCEU, sorry, with Henry Cavill leaving. I know you guys are like big Zack Snyder fans, big Henry Cavill fans.
Yeah.
So I'm quite interested in what your opinion is on this, but there definitely needs to be counterweight. And I think earlier this year, the Batman with Rob Pattinson came out. I really loved that film. I really, really enjoyed that film. I think there was actually like quite a few like comparisons to Voidman. Even though Voidman came out before the Batman, there are like a lot of things that are very similar. The runtime, the structure of the film, and I think films like that provides a nice counterweight. Even though it didn't make $1 billion, but it's a fresh and a new interpretation. You need to keep it fresh. You need to keep it new, or else it's going to die out. And the way the Batman looks, it looks very different to an MCU film or a Russo brothers film, where it's just like a gray, very muted palette. So yeah, I just think that counterweight and sort of there needs to be a bit of a push and pull in the industry to like really promote a healthy and long lasting lifespan for it.
Yeah, I know I can speak for Ethan and I when I say our opinions on the whole thing with Zack Snyder is just we're just excited for Rebel Moon. Just that's going to be awesome. We loved Army of the Dead. Rebel Moon looks like it's going to be awesome. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Have we talked about the superhero stuff, Ethan, on our show before, or do you know?
Been a while.
I can't
it's
remember
been a hot minute since we brought it up. Yeah, I don't know in the last time we did. I know we've talked Star Wars. I'm surprised we haven't done a Zack Snyder episode yet.
Yeah. Well, do you guys have any opinions on like Henry Cavill leaving?
Ethan, you go. Floor is yours. I'll go next.
Man, yeah, no, it was a surprise in the sense of like knowing that he left The Witcher in like order to come back to play Superman, and that he had a cameo role in Black Adam. That was like, well, I think there was a lot of hope there that it was setting the floor for something more to come. And so to kind of have that announcement come shortly after that he's not coming back, and that was it. I mean, I think a lot of fans will all agree that was just a huge bummer moment. And like fans of the DCEU, particularly what Zach was doing, but didn't just in general, like wanting those characters and those stories to be successful. I think it's just been a lot of not great news, like just very regularly from that. And that's just kind of not the funnest thing when you're a big fan of these characters and you want those stories to be told well. Yeah, I don't know. Jordan, do you want to jump in on anything?
Superman, yeah, it was sad. He's probably my favorite Superman we've had. He's like up there.
You have that Superman tattoo, right?
Yeah, right here.
Yeah.
So Superman's my favorite, and he's definitely like, if he's not my favorite Superman, he's at least tied for first. He's up there for me. So I'm sad with that, but the DCU as a whole, like this, I'm gonna stop myself because there's so much, but I will say, this is from someone who's never run a studio, who doesn't know how all the intricacies, but follows the stories and rumors very well. It's a hot mess over there.
Yeah.
It seems like, and from a fan perspective, they seem to be doing a lot of stuff to please the haters of whatever property they're like. I don't know. It's kind of a mess, and it's disappointing to see. And I can't, we talk about The Dark Knight Rises. I can't believe that it's the same studio that released the Dark Knight trilogy, because those were at the time, I mean, influenced you, but influenced us totally as well.
Yeah.
100%.
But
Yeah.
I think everybody can agree at the time, the Dark Knight trilogy were kind of seen as like the godfather of blockbuster comic book movies, of like, this is the best of auteur filmmaking and Hollywood blockbuster filmmaking combined. Like, this is the best
100%.
it can be.
Yeah.
And that's not a comment on the quality of DC's newer stuff at all. Because frankly, I don't care if you liked or disliked Suicide Squad or Black Adam or Zack Snyder's Justice League. Regardless of the quality, the studio behind those films has shown, according to the leaks and rumors, of course, show like a lot of like studio meddling. Like, it seems like there's a lot of studio meddling and not giving filmmakers true autonomy over their films. So it's really weird to see that this is the same studio that stood behind Chris Nolan in making his trilogy, to see them kind of micromanage and also fumble the ball at the same time. It's really weird. So that's what I'll say, because otherwise we'd be sitting here talking for hours and hours talking about everything.
Yeah.
In terms of soap opera, because I saw soap opera. I can't remember when I saw it exactly, but recently this week I saw your behind the scenes video for soap opera.
Right. Yeah.
And I think that is such a great behind the scenes video for kind of capturing what it feels like to make your first movie, your first film. And there's a bit in there which I got to send to you, Ethan, because it cracks me up, where you're talking about scheduling and the craziness of scheduling a movie.
Gosh.
It is so perfect. Like, you got to check it out. I'll send you like the timestamp and everything.
I can already feel this. It's so real.
It's the best, like, however 20 seconds or whatever it is of this video. It's like it encapsulates what it feels like to schedule for a no budget feature film with like high school friends so well. What did you in soap opera? What did you learn from that experience? What was the main takeaway that you have looking back, having made it already?
I think with soap opera, the main lesson, the main like sort of philosophy that I took away from that experience was that, like, the concept of making a feature film, right? Making a film like that's 2 hours long was so alien and so foreign to 17-year-old me. And then one day, out of the blue, like, it was done. Like, I'd done it, right? Like, I'd crossed that bridge, I crossed that barrier. And I think it kind of made me realize, like, oh my God, we put a lot of limitations on ourselves and what we can like truly achieve. And when you're faced with, when you give yourself like an insurmountable task, it can feel insurmountable, it can feel like you can never, ever achieve it, right? And that's just often not the reality. You can really, really push yourself, and things can really go into your favor if you really work hard for it, right? So it's just a very like simple, universal like theme of like, when you put your mind to something, you can achieve anything. That was just kind of the lesson I learned at that age. I think, like, when you're that young, like, that's a lesson you do need to learn it at your life at some point, and that just happened to be, soap opera happened to be that. And that then influenced Void Man, where I was like, well, if I can accidentally make a 2-hour feature film, then I can purposely make a 3-hour epic, right? So it's just kind of having that like blind self-belief and like just trusting yourself and shooting for the stars kind of thing.
Yeah. Were there because I mean, it was your first feature film. So were there things that you learned in soap opera, or like mistakes that you made that as you were working on Void Man and preparing for that, or shooting it, that you made during soap opera that you like learned not to make during Void Man? Yeah,
100%. I think with every single feature film you make, every like in any art form or any kind of, when you embody a project, you learn a lot, and then when you go to the next thing, you learn from that. And I always have this interpretation that like every film that a filmmaker makes is like a sequel to their last film, even if it's not a like a direct like narrative sequel, because it always builds upon the previous, right? So in soap opera, I made a lot of mistakes with that first film, because one, the intention, the intention was not for it to be a feature. So it wasn't kind of paced or structured as a feature. It's just a very, very long short film, right? Two, there was like a lot of, I think there was a lot of technical elements that could have been improved upon. I shot the film on an iPhone, which I have nothing against. Like, I know, Wild Boys shot on the iPhone, and it was House shot on an iPhone.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So I like iPhone photography. And I think you can actually, like, especially with the newer phones that are coming out, you can create some like truly beautiful products. But the audio was not great. That's something that I was like, okay, I need to fix that up. There was also this like lack of like mise en scene and like atmosphere. There wasn't much of a score, or like an undergoing like tempo to the film. And soap opera also like embodies a very like minimalist approach. These are all things that kind of, this is what the film is ultimately, right? Like, I would never change anything about it, but making that kind of film a very kind of minimalist, quiet, single camera, single frame type of film. Going into Voidman, I was like, okay, like I want to switch things up. So Voidman is the complete opposite, right? Like there is a piece of music or like some kind of diegetic sound like from minute 1 to minute 180. The camera is like constantly moving. I'm zooming in. I'm like trying to like fill the frame with like color. Every single like piece of clothing someone wears is meant to symbolize something. All the color, there's a huge color theory that's like found throughout the entire film. The film is laced with metaphors and ambiguity. Like, I'm trying to like just go ham and like try to like really make almost the anti soap opera. And if when you watch soap opera, the whole film is like very quiet, and then the ending of the film has this like kind of loud, like it has this musical piece that like is this huge sense of like catharsis, and this huge, there's like this nice sense of release at the end with the music. That's because I really showed restraint throughout the entire film, and then there's music used at the end. With Voidman, it's actually the exact opposite. The whole film, there is music, there is sound, there is image, there is like this intense, there's just a lot, right? And then at the very end of the film, everything's stripped back. It's complete silence. It's very minimal, and it's like that's like the reverse, right? So I think the two films are actually like they complement each other like really well. You can watch them back to back, and you can see like, wow, these two films are like the yin and yang of each other. But yeah, I think it was the main thing I learned was just building off of soap opera. And I know when I make my my third film, I will build off Voidman and soap opera, and it'll just keep going from there.
Yeah. A shot that impresses me so much. While you were talking about the energy of Voidman, there's this shot, I think it's about halfway through. You'll have to forgive me. It's been a while since I've seen it, but where it must have been like a drone where it goes from like a house and it like goes over the whole like city to like the girl up on the hill, like overwatching. Is that right? Am I remember right? How did you pull that off? Because that shot was incredible.
Yeah.
Like, I think my jaw hit the floor.
Yeah. That was actually, it's funny you say that, because that is one of the very few times in the film where on the day I felt like I didn't get it. I didn't get the shot. When you get the shot, you just kind of know like this is it. We tried that over multiple days, and it was like maybe the single most complicated shot of my entire career. Like, and I don't know if you remember this, but the shot before that is this huge like long take that follows the guy running around the house, and then the car pulls in, and then they come in and they talk, and then he comes back upstairs. That was a very complicated shot. And then the next one is the drone shot. I don't know. So for my 18th birthday, my friends actually got me a drone for my birthday. So I was like, I'm definitely putting this in Voidman. And then
that's so cool.
So I tried to utilize the drone as best I could, but basically it was a drone shot. So we start from the window with the drone. He's like out the window, and then the drone comes down, comes down. The character walks through, and then you're meant to follow the character into the car. The character gets in the car, drives down the street. The drone drives down the street and then flies into the girl's face.
Yeah.
Very complicated shot, like 3 very intricate like movements there. Yeah, I don't know. That's kind of how I achieved it. I think there are always going to be moments like that in your films where you really try to push yourself and you push the ambition. And I think it's actually very healthy to be just slightly more ambitious than you actually can afford to be, because it will, like, you can create incredible product, but you will learn a lot at the end of the day.
That's
I
all.
don't
Yeah. Yeah.
I
I
don't know
agree with
how
that.
I don't know how anybody watches Void Man and can immediately be hit by the pure ambition of the whole thing. I mean, I very distinctly remember watching the movie and I think texting Ethan, maybe it was you or maybe it was you and the RC boys, but I was like,
Hmm.
this is the most ambitious YouTube movie I've seen yet. Just the
Yeah.
scale, the scope, the how the camera was constantly moving. Um, I mean, a lot of movies have come out since then on YouTube, and I haven't seen all of them, but I'm from my memory, it feels like the biggest in scale in terms of a YouTube movie in an amazing way. So
Hmm.
even if, kind of like you said, like if you feel like you didn't get the shot, or if you feel like, oh, gee, maybe I didn't meet my vision, your vision is so big. Like even if you make it halfway there, it's way above where everybody else is playing, if that makes sense.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And so I really appreciate that about Void Man. Is, I mean, to me and Ethan, it's like, oh my gosh, the sheer ambition, the scale, this is perfect. Like this
Yeah.
is great. But then you're like, oh, maybe I didn't reach it, or maybe I didn't do this. But that's what's great about us, because we don't know all the production stuff necessarily. Um,
Yeah.
Talk about ambition more in terms of your next film, because it's kind of cool to hear you explain soap opera, and I was very restrained. In Void
Yeah.
Man, you wanted to go in the opposite direction in a different way. Where do you want to go with your third film?
Yes. Third film, film three. Um, yeah, well, I mean, like, to be honest, I don't really know what the third film is. Obviously, there are a lot of like ideas kind of circulating around my head. I will drop this. I will drop this exclusive. This might age really well.
Ooh.
It might not age at all. But I think, I think for my third film, I do want to do black and white. I think I
Ooh,
want to make the black and white noir type film. I
So
think
good.
with my third film, so as I mentioned, like you always kind of build upon your last project. I think soap opera, I did demonstrate a lot of restraint, and then Void Man, I tried to really go for it. But I think with soap opera, the restraint that was demonstrated was due to a lot of limitations, or kind of like adolescence, and like I was a bit of an amateur with filmmaking, and I feel like I really actually like came into my own as an artist with Void Man. And now that I feel like I'm very confident in my voice. I think going going back to a more like restrained approach is, I think, maybe the next move for me. And I think with black and white, you're working with two colors. You're working with like a very limited gradient. And I think you can create. I want to create some like really beautiful, and like I want to restrain myself a lot, but like create diamonds out of pressure kind of thing. I want to. Uh, I don't know. I think I will try to limit myself more with the next film, but also try to achieve and maintain the same kind of ambition. I think with my next film, I am trying to, like, I spent 2.5 years on Void Man, a 3-hour film, right? If I spent that 2.5 years on a film that was like only an hour and 20 minutes, I think like every single second, every single frame, every single shot of that film has like a lot more time available to like spend on it. So I think my next film, I want it to be like a like absolute like technical masterwork. That's like kind of the main ambition. But earlier you were talking about ambition, and then like the interpretation of ambition with making a film. I think something that came to my mind as you were saying that was folk filmmaking, the kind of the idea around folk filmmaking, right, where the medium is the message, and the idea that anyone can make a feature film, like that is ultimately like the central like thesis of folk filmmaking, is that anyone can make a feature, right, and it can be free and it can be available and you can do it. And it's it's about the promotion of making a film, no matter you could be the most limited, you could have literally zero resources, but if you have a camera you can do it, right? I think that is like going back to what we were mentioning earlier. I think, you know, the ambition that I demonstrated with Voidman is really, it's the exact same ambition that you and I both share. It's just that creating the product, you know, and it might seem like an insurmountable task, like the 3-hour runtime or even a 40-minute runtime. It might seem like a huge thing, but you can do it. And that, I think that's like one of the things that I am proud of Voidman about, is that it hopefully showed a few people that, like, you know, someone at 19 can make a 3-hour feature film. Like, the quality does not matter. Like, the fact is that it is 3 hours, right? And anyone can do that kind of thing. So yeah, I got a bit off topic there, but I just wanted to put that out there.
No, that's great. Well,
I think it's.
I'm trying to be. I'm trying. Ethan, I think it's your turn for a question. I'm trying to.
No, you're okay. Sorry. I try not to cough. Hold on. That was great. I had a thought, and I'm trying to bring it back. In terms of okay.
No. You thought of it, so it's you go.
Okay. So we were talking about scheduling actors earlier and all that stuff. How do you get your actors? Like, are these all just friends? Because that's how we most of our movies happen, is it's people that we know that we drag into movies, whether they want to or not. We make them actors. How does it kind of work for you? Is it a lot of friends, or do you pull from like local actor like Facebook groups or anything like that?
Yeah, so these are all like pretty much every single actor in Voidman and soap opera. They're all from my high school, so they're all high school friends. Yeah, they're just from high school. I think that another thing that is like important is that when you are young, it's very important to maintain ambition and try to achieve things that when you're older. I feel like when you're older, it's like much harder. Like, I was able to make Voidman because I was 19 or 18, right?
Yeah.
I was actually 18 when I shot the film. And that's because I was young and I had access to a lot of, you know, friends from high school. And I didn't have to, you know, pay off my mortgage. I didn't have to pay rent. I didn't have to deal with a lot of adult stuff. So yeah, they were just like a lot of like school friends, and yeah.
No, that's great. What was your for scheduling? Because scheduling is always a nightmare. What's your process for like scheduling people, or what are your tips for people who are trying to schedule their first feature film and are trying to figure all that out?
So my scheduling process with both soap opera and Voidman, which I like, no one told me this. I just kind of adopted this. I just like assumed this is how it's done. I don't know how effective this is, but I mean, you know, it allowed me to make a 3-hour feature shot across like 82 days or something like that. Anyway, my process is I make a schedule that is like literally the single like best case scenario. Like, so the best case scenario for soap opera was like, I think 6 days. In 6 days, if everything goes according to plan, I can shoot this entire thing, right? And the schedule, the days are located around the locations. So if there's 3 scenes in a house, I say, okay, day 1, it's all the scenes in a house. And then if there's 2 scenes, you know, in a mall, day 2, it's all the scenes in the mall, right? My best case scenario schedule for Voidman was 22 days, which is a long time in and of itself. The thing about, you know, creating the best case scenario schedule is that it will never actually, you know, go according to plan. Like, it'll always go over, right? So with soap opera, it was like 6 days, but it ended up being about 2 weeks. With Voidman, it was 22 days, but you know, it ended up being plus 80 or something like that. So it was a lot of, yeah, there was a lot of extension. But basically, my method is I create the best case scenario schedule, and then I just try to build off that. So maybe if I, you know, day 1 I don't get the very last scene, well then we'll put that into another day, or we'll make that day 23 and add another day. You know, and someday, I mean, look, some days, like I think my 6th day of shooting Voidman, there was like there was all these scenes at the house, the drone shot I mentioned earlier, where, you know, that comes out. there's like, I think 12 pages of the screenplay, 6 to 12, I can't remember the exact number, that are all takes place in that house. And I wanted to shoot every single scene in that house on that single day. And I did. I actually did. I successfully. It was a very intense shoot. It was like from minute one to however long. I was just going, and I was like, it's making a feature film is physically exhausting, right? And yeah, but then sometimes it does work out. The best case scenario, days like you have a day and you meet the deadline, and that's great. But typically it won't work out. But that's like, I know that like scheduling a film seems like a really hard task, but you pretty much just have to wing it. You just have to like just do it and then keep working, keep working, keep working.
I have a similar process to you, because what I'll do is I'll divide the screenplay up by, depending on what's more of a tricky variable. Like if for La Danza, the newest, the one we just shot, there's a lot of locations
Bro,
in that one.
I am so hyped for La Danza. Holy shit, that trailer. Oh my God, man.
I was watching the trailer
serious?
at my family's like Christmas party, and I was sitting in the corner,
Jesus
and I've seen it
Christ.
so many times, and I was just watching it again on my phone in the corner.
Thank you. The locations were a big variable in that one because there's really not that many cast members. So what I did was I broke up the schedule by location. So I said, okay, all the scenes that take place at a house will be shot on this day. All the scenes at a park will be this day, and so on and so forth. But I'll do that for other feature films, like say, I'm forgetting the exact one. I think maybe for Great American Sleepover, Ethan, or in that era, what we would do was we didn't organize days by location, but by actors. So whoever was in the scenes, we would try to group them by actors, and then put them all into our perfect days, so to speak, where, okay, if all goes according to plan, this is how we're going to shoot it. And of course, it never does, because filmmaking is problem solving. I think you say that in your behind the scenes doc of Soap Opera. I think that filmmaking is problem solving. How do you keep a clear head when you're on set and everything is going wrong?
I mean, how does anyone? I don't know. I don't know. I guess like there was a day. It's funny you actually mentioned that. The story I was telling earlier, how I had the perfect day where we shot the 12 pages in the one day, right? So it was all. I'm just gonna tell this quick story. I went to the person's house to film, and I'm waiting there, and it's like 9 a.m. or whatever, and not a single cast member turns up. Like no one shows up. Right? And I'm like, oh my God, okay. So what we do, I feel like such a burden. What we do is we get in that car and we drive to every single person's house and we knock on that door. And I'm like, hey, are we still shooting today? And they have to like get dressed, get ready and everything. And then eventually, like a couple hours behind, because they were all like, yeah, we'll definitely shoot. And then every single person slept in. So they all felt bad and they're like, no, we'll give me a couple minutes. I'll get dressed. I'll come. I gathered around all the people. I'm already like 2 hours behind schedule. I have to film like 12 pages. I don't know. You just kind of have to just don't back down, like you have to have this like kind of blind, sheer ambition. That's like this like incredible drive. You just have to have this incredible drive and you have to have like this like deep conviction to just see the project through, especially with Void Man. I was like, I cannot, like I spent a lot of money on Void Man, the camera and the mics and everything and the scale of it, like it takes a lot out of you. So I was like, if I don't give this 110%, there's literally no point to making this film. So, and I think that honestly, that philosophy should be adopted to every kind of film, but it does take a lot out of you. Like it was very physically exhausting, after like a few weeks, I was like eating a lot and then not eating at all. And I was like very like sleep deprived and my life was like thrown out of whack and everything was just upside down. But you only get to shoot a feature film like a finite amount of times in your life. You can't just it's not just something that like happens all the time. So and like for me, I'm the type of filmmaker who like likes to wait a while between projects. Like I don't like to just kind of create. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but I'm the person who likes to like really like methodically plan on when I like release something. I want it to be like an event, you know. So when I do make a feature film, I just try to put everything in my soul into it.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm laughing because I picture you. I mean, you say you go to every cast member's house. Just the image of you standing there, like in your Void Man costume, just like with like a weapon under your coat, like, hey, it's time to shoot, it's time to film.
Yeah.
That's so great. We've definitely had experiences like that where actors forget or sleep in, or you know,
Yep.
they forget or whatever. Yeah,
Any problem that's happened. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's like really good. Again, like everything that goes wrong just prepares you really well for the next thing that goes wrong. So like the more you're
100%.
exposed to that, the better it is for you. So like I know filmmakers get terrified of things going wrong early on, but it's like it's gonna happen. Like you just gotta ride that wave and you'll get better at it each time. Like now when things don't go great for us, it's pretty like, yeah, cool. Like we kind of you know it's gonna happen at some point. I know with La Danza, when Jordan would ask us to be like available to help out on set, like what you would schedule every day as if we weren't going to be there, but ask us anyways.
Yeah. That's actually, I don't think I've talked about that, but yeah, that's a good kind of lesson or tip. So and something I told Zach when he was scheduling his movie too, on the last few days of La Danza, I had, I think, 3 more shooting days to do. And I knew that I absolutely needed Zach and Ethan there for at least one of those days. And what I did was I was like, okay, but I knew I would love for their help for all 3 of those days. So what I did was in my head, I was like playing, okay, I'm going to assume that I can't shoot with Zach and Ethan for all 3 of those days, but I'm going to assume that I only have them for one day and kind of go into shooting that day, that footage for that shooting block, just planning like, okay, I'm going to be alone, I need this and this, here's how we're going to shoot it, and kind of having that backup plan already locked and loaded, ready to go. Because otherwise, when they can't show up, or things go wrong, you're kind of like a deer in the headlights. I think it's a really good philosophy. I think both of you guys know this. Just you got to be like, you got to be able to change and adapt. And when life throws something your way, you got to just be able to be like, cool, great, that's how things are. Like you can't get angry, you can't get mad, you can't. I mean, of course you can feel that way, but like you can't. You just got to roll with the punches, essentially.
Well, it is also like you have to remember that like everyone being in your film, like they're doing a huge favor to you, like you're typically not like I mean, you might be providing food, but like I didn't pay any of my actors or anything like that. Like they did it because they wanted to, but it was also a huge favor. And so it's like you can't demonstrate like frustration out on them ever, right? Like you have to have the like utmost complete respect for them.
Exactly. And real quick before you go, Ethan,
you're good.
every time when Zach and Ethan shot on La Danza with me, I made sure that they were fed, they had snacks, and they had drinks. On the very last day of shooting, because it was the last day, because it was going to be like maybe 3 hours, 4 hours at the very most, but I think it ended up being like 3 hours or something. I was like, okay, we're going to get in, we're going to be out quick. I brought, so I just brought the gear that we had. And for whatever reason, we're shooting for a little bit and you're like, hey, Jordan, did you bring any drinks? And I was like, oh, I forgot. I felt so bad.
I just wanted some water.
I know. But it was a funny moment of like, great, we're going to shoot. And I was like totally in the head of like, just there to shoot, not necessarily thinking about what the crew needs necessarily. But I think it's easy when you're starting out filmmaking. It's easy to kind of, like you said, it's easy to kind of get stuck in your own head, care about the project a bunch, and kind of forget about the people who are helping you out. I mean, it's a good lesson. You got to respect and show appreciation for your crew and your cast members when you are filming with no budget.
100%.
Yeah.
All right, we've talked about some good days on set. I just have one more days on set question for you. What was your favorite shooting day for Voidman and for soap opera? Like, was there a certain scene that you shot that was great, or just a day that went super well, or any wild stories?
Yeah, I'm trying to think. My favorite shooting day. I think it was that story of the 12 pages, shooting that in one day, because that was like a huge, like from the depths of hell, no one shows up to like getting it all done. Um,
That's pretty good.
I know, like that day we also did film the long take inside the house and the drone shot. Like we achieved a lot of great things that day.
That's
Um,
incredible.
there was I don't know, there was a lot of days that I gave my like crew like a lot to do. Like there was this long take that we filmed. It's this 4 minute 4 minute long take of two characters walking and talking that ultimately like it's in the film but it's kind of chopped and screwed. That was like a fun day but an intense day and a hard day. um i think I think the day we filmed the opening scene, right, we filmed like the opening scene, that was like a great day because it was like it was raining. We were like, oh, I don't know if we can shoot, and I was like, well, let's just like lean into it. Like it wasn't, we weren't planning for it to be raining, but we'll just do it
Yeah.
anyway. And I think it turned out great. And then obviously the scene at night in the opening scene where Void Man's first introduction. I think I'm also like very proud of how that turned out.
Mhm.
There are days where things, it's funny, like you have to expect the unexpected, but the unexpected is not always bad. Like sometimes there are things that turn out that actually like are beneficiary to the
Mhm.
product, to the film itself, and to yourself. And then there are days that just go absolutely like terrible and bad. I think the worst day on set. I know the worst day on set was the day at the end of Act One. There's this scene where there's like a car chase between like Voidman and Redman, where Redman is tailing Voidman, and like they're driving through Cameltown, and then they like get out and it becomes an on foot chase, and then they go into like the woods and in the bush, and then like it becomes that, and it becomes a shootout. And that was like a very like hot day, very intense, very physically demanding. I like suffered like heat stroke. I like almost like collapsed and everything. I was like in the Voidman gear and carrying the camera around, and there was like a lot of like tension that day because everyone was kind of like fed up and was like, it was like a really tough time. And I wasn't like very happy with like the footage we were capturing. So that was like one of like the hardest and like one of like the worst days on set. But even that was like not that bad. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. Going back to what you were talking about, filming in the rain, we had a film professor, Jordan and I, who
Mhm.
that was a piece of advice she gave us of always shoot in the rain because it's going to make your footage that much better looking and just so much. She just talked about all the energy that gives your scene and good free production value. And we live in Oregon, so it rains all the time here. So it's like hard to avoid it anyways. So
And it was a
yeah.
metaphor for adapting to things. If your
Mm-hmm.
scene's outside and you got to shoot and everybody's there and it starts raining, just shoot in the rain. Don't worry. Like
Yeah.
you don't
Yeah.
have time to like, oh no, it's not like. I mean, of course, if it's a movie set in like I don't know, that's a point of the movie of like it never rains in this town or something. Then I guess yeah, you can't. But
Yeah.
you gotta change. You gotta be like water. You know.
100%.
Um, I want to ask for Void Man because I can't remember if you mentioned this before or not. Who was running camera or like the crew for you? Was it just you directing and
Mm.
manning the camera, or were there a couple of friends who you had on gear and everything?
Yeah. So pretty much every single shot that I'm not in, I'm behind the camera. I'm the one like manning that. And then every shot that I am in, it's often the other crew. I would never give them like a lot of like difficult tasks. Like I don't think you really notice when you watch the film, but if you I think Voidman, like my character is not involved in a lot of like complex camera movement. The only time he's really involved in like complex camera movement is the fight scene with between me and Redman under the bridge, and then there's like it ends with that drone shot that like flies into the sky. That's the only time where my character I think is like really like put into like some like strenuous camera movement. But yeah, it was pretty much just the crew. It was just you know, my friends. It was primarily, yeah, just pretty much just the crew and just like, yeah, whoever was available. You know, like that's the folk filmmaking way ultimately.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. I have a really specific question. Somewhat personal, so don't feel obligated to share, but it's something that Ethan and I can have experience with. So, is your girlfriend in Void Man?
Yes, yeah, well,
Okay.
yes. So my ex-girlfriend is in
Oh,
Void
okay.
Man. So we actually did break up earlier this year. It just took a personal turn. But yeah, no. So she is in Void Man. She actually plays Angela slash Sapphire, which is like my love interest.
Hmm.
Yeah. And we're both still like very proud of the film, and we're both like friends, and we're both on good terms and everything. But we did make the film when we were together.
Because, and again, don't feel to share if you don't want to. That's fine. I asked because Ethan and I, his wife, my girlfriend, they both appeared in our movies, and
Right.
kind of in the early stages of the relationships. I don't know. You can speak for Sarah better than I can.
Yeah.
I feel my girlfriend Amanda, she was way more willing to be on camera because it was like a new relationship, and everything. But now, kind of, it's been like 6, almost 7 years. She's like, yeah, I don't really want to act. I don't like. I just do it because I just did it because I wanted to spend more time with you. Um,
Yeah.
I don't know about your experience with that, Ethan, or
Oh yeah.
but like my girlfriend does not want to act or anything, and I was curious if having worked with with like someone you're in a relationship with, what that dynamic was like, because I know some partners work really well together on film, some don't, and are total opposite. Ethan, I mean, what's it like for Sarah? I mean, it's kind of similar,
Well,
isn't it?
it's similar. She doesn't like acting. She doesn't
Yeah.
like the sound, like hearing her voice, which is like everyone. When you hear you're like editing, everyone always hates their voice. Like I'm so desensitized now, I don't care. Um, but yeah, so she like our first date was filming Ready Set Smile.
Hmm.
So we filmed that.
Your first
It was our
date.
first like
Wow.
real date. Well, no, because we did that, and then we went to go see Lego Batman that night, and that was the date.
I see.
But we count the filming as part of the date now. But so we did that, and then she acted in a couple other things every now and again. But the most recent thing she was in was Wild Boys 3.
Hmm.
And I didn't think she was going to say yes. Luckily, she
Wow.
did. And I even was like, when I pitched her, I was like, you don't have to say a single line if you don't want to. We just need you to be there and to like be mad at me.
She didn't have to speak, but she had some great lines in
she
when
did.
we were filming. She had some great one-liners. Yeah.
What sucks is now she'll never watch Wild Boys 3.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
So, oh well. But yeah, I don't cast her in much anymore. Like I'd maybe ask her if I really was in a pinch, but I don't expect her to be in things anymore, which is fine. And she's okay with that too.
But I guess back to our question. I mean, are there close people that you're with who you can just always count on to film with, or are there people who you filmed with a bunch and they're like, I'm not into it so much anymore?
Yeah. No, I think, yeah, like, so my friend Jonathan, who plays Candaris, who's like the main antagonist slash protagonist of the film, he's a very close friend of mine, and so I was like really like able to count on him for soap opera. So when I approached him for Void Man, he was down with it, but him and I both didn't realize like how intense the process would be. And I think also with my ex-girlfriend, she was like also down to film, but I think it took Voidman, like the intensity of Voidman took everyone by surprise, myself included, where it was like, holy, like we are like really, this is taking a lot, and it's taking a long time. It's like going, triple over budget, triple over like schedule and everything. And I think like, it can get tough, and it can actually become like quite strenuous, and as I was mentioning earlier, like when you dive in and you try to like give it your all, it can like really take it out of you. And I think, there were a few cast members, like my ex-girlfriend or even like Jonathan, who were like, it was like getting tough on them towards the end because I was like asking a lot out of them. They were like having to give me a lot, you know, and it did like it was kind of it was like a tumultuous time, and I think I've learned a lot from that experience, and like I learned a lot of things not to do, and like, you know, you can only like, you know, give your friends, you know, these are your friends at the end of the day. You can only give your friends so much. And yeah, I think like, you know, going forward, I do definitely want a much more like relaxed set and a relaxed environment.
Before I forget, because we got to cover this, literally the day we're recording. So this episode's going to come out probably in January, about. But the day we're recording this is a special day for one of our fellow filmmaker friends, someone, a fellow Australian for you. Merdul's movie Egomaniac, The Heart of Gold, has just come out today, which you
Yes,
are in. So
I'm in. Yes.
we talked a little bit about the movie with Merdul, but at the time the movie had not come out, so he couldn't say much.
Yeah.
Uh,
Great interview, by the way.
oh yeah, thank you. Well, Merdul is so easy to talk to. He's great, gives
Yeah,
great answers.
he does.
Take us back to when you and Merdul met, up to filming.
Yeah.
Like I want to hear it all. How you guys got connected.
Yeah, let's do it. So, as aforementioned, the making of soap opera video, that came up in his YouTube recommended. That video, by the way, that video is like an hour and 19 minutes. Like that could be a feature film in and of itself. But he saw that video and he watched the entire thing, and you know, was really he reached out to me and he said, "Hey, you know, I watched this. I thought it was really good. I thought this was, you know, really good, and like it's really cool." And then I like, you know, messaged him back and was like, "Oh, you know, thank you for watching this." And then I believe he interviewed me for soap opera all the way back in like 2020. I think it was like November of 2020 or somewhere around there. And he interviewed me for soap opera, and then I was also like about to shoot Void Man, so he started like talking to me about Void Man, and then I shot Void Man, and then over the course of 2021, we started to become friends. We started to become, you know, closer. We would just, you know, message each other back and forth. We had a couple of Zoom calls. I remember telling him I had this story in my head, and so I said, "Oh, can I tell you this like idea I have in my head?" And he said, "Sure." Yeah. And so we you know, jumped on Zoom. We also realized that we both lived in Sydney. I think that's a huge factor into why we've maintained a friendship and why we became friends, is because we were in close proximity to each other. You know, we're both in the same city and we're both sort of at the same age. We're very similar in age. We're only 6 months apart. We're both trying to achieve the same thing. So there's just a lot of similarities. So we just kind of naturally clicked. And then I remember telling him this. I tried to explain the story I had in my head, and it was like a 4 hour long Zoom call where I like went through everything. We like really bonded, and we kept talking. And then he was also trying to make, I believe he was trying to make Thank God for Drugs
Right.
in 2021. And so he was like kind of, you know, and I was also simultaneously making Void Man. But then Thank God for Drugs kind of was like fell through, I think in like September. And he also released The Last Day of Childhood. That was another thing, right? At the beginning of 2021, he released The Last Day of Childhood. And so we kind of bonded over that. So we just kind of kept in close proximity. We also watched, I think it was in June, we watched Mean Streets by Martin Scorsese. It's the third film he ever made. We watched it in 35 millimeter. That was the very first time we met. It was the very first time he'd ever seen something projected on film and watched it like that. And that was a great day. Yeah, we just kind of became friends. I think we have a lot of similarities and sort of, and we kind of understand each other really well. We're both, you know, I think quirky in similar ways, but we kind of express it differently. So yeah, and so then he then earlier this year asked me to be in his film Egomaniac with a Heart of Gold. But I mean, at the time, he just said, "Can you be in film two?" Right? Like that's how he kind of refers to his films: film one, film two, film three. So I was like, "Yeah, I can be in it." And so he picked me up, and then, you know, drove me to his house, and he, you know, gave me the screenplay, and I read it. I read my scenes. I didn't know anything about the film. I literally didn't know anything about the film until like a few hours ago when I sat down and watched it. We should definitely talk about the film as well, Jordan, because I think there's a lot
You're
to
right.
unpack. But yeah, and then we filmed, and that was a good experience. I got to kind of see him in his element, see how he films. Um, and yeah, it was only one day of shooting. I'm not in the film that much, but I do have a somewhat, interesting role, substantial role. Yeah.
Are from your memory, or I guess when you shot, was there anything that was cut that didn't make it into the film? Or was that pretty representative of what you spent doing when you were shooting?
I think it's fairly representative, but the thing with Myrtle and his kind of style is that,
Mhm.
he discovers a lot through the editing process, so like it's ironic. My philosophy with filmmaking is like, you write and then you shoot and then you edit kind of thing. And like the writing needs to be like, you need to get that perfect, right? And then when you shoot, it kind of builds upon the screenplay, it builds upon what you've written, and then when you edit, it builds upon what you shot, and it's like the film is like made and killed and made and killed three times. With Myrtle, I think it's a completely different process. I think it's like the editing is really, that is like the central point of creation for him, and like the writing and the shooting, that's only there to get to the editing. And so he discovers so much through editing. I mean, just from watching Egomaniac, but even Last Day of Childhood,
Mhm.
he creates these like narrative threads. He creates this momentum through how he cuts two images together, or the music he plays, or the flashes of the lights. And I think with Egomaniac, like, yeah, I'm in the film, but like it didn't really go the way we shot it, even though he kind of left everything in, because he cut it up and he changed it up and he changed around the pacing, and he really created something out of nothing ultimately.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I really I aspire to be as good as an editor as Merdul because
Yeah,
I mean, to me, I think editing is, for me, I think that's one of my favorite aspects of filmmaking. And that's one of the things that I value most. And to get to that point where he's able to like manipulate his footage in just that way that he does is just so it's so beautiful, it's so gorgeous. And it was a real
yeah.
struggle I've had for the last few months editing La Danza, is just trying to like, okay, I several
Mm.
points I'm like, okay, I gotta think like Merdul right now, I gotta like, how would he do
Yeah,
this, and just channel
actually,
some of that. Yeah.
I feel the exact same way. I remember watching Last Day of Childhood at the very beginning of 2021, and that actually like taught me and influenced me a lot on like, wow, this guy kind of created so much from so little. And so going into Voidman, remember I shot Voidman for one entire year, and I think Myrtle's film was always in the back of my mind. Um, and it was this, the way he was able to manipulate the frame, and he was able to create so much from the footage he compiled. I definitely took that philosophy into Voidman. And I think it's a at this stage of filmmaking, I think that's an incredible mentality to have. Very useful.
Yeah. Yeah. Ethan, I don't want to hog the mic, the
No, you're good.
metaphorical
You're
mic
good.
here. You go
You're
ahead.
doing good. No, yeah, was the so you said you only got the script pages for your scene. Was that something you asked for, or was that just what Merdul does when he's directing a movie? Does he only give his actors the scenes that they're in?
Yeah. Myrtle didn't even want to give me any, like, he didn't want to give me any single like screenplay, nothing. Like
That's
I'm the
great.
one, because when I did Voidman, no, not a single person except my ex-girlfriend Olivia and my best friend Jonathan knew I had read the entire screenplay. Every single other person, I said, here are your scenes for the day, and we'll go from there. So I wanted, like, I was like, oh, can you give me the screenplay? Because I kind of want to like rehearse my lines. And he's like, oh, I'll give it to you on the day. And I was like, I don't want to turn in a bad performance. And he doesn't. I think he doesn't like. You can't really have a bad performance in a Myrtle Chiba film, because it's like the editing is the central actor of the film. It's the
Mhm.
driving force. It's not. I don't think his films at this stage are very like performance based. And he did talk about that in your interview you did with him, where he said
Yeah.
these three films are like sort of him becoming, like, learning to become a filmmaker, and then his next three films will be like more literary, but maybe a bit more like traditional. So yeah, he wasn't really like that fussed about like performance because I think he has the faith in him that it'll just all come through in the end.
Yeah.
That's wild. He's got such a different mindset. It's so cool.
He does, yeah, very innovative.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I really want to dive into the movie, but I don't want to spoil things for you, Ethan. But
I know. I'm sorry. I
it's
ruined it.
no. It literally just came out like what, 2 hours ago, 3 hours
Yeah,
ago.
literally like just
Yeah.
like
Like I
2 hours
said,
ago.
I was anxious. I've been anxiously watching the YouTube, just hitting refresh, like whenever,
Yeah.
just because I wanted to see it before
Yeah.
this. But yeah, what I can say though is Ethan, same reaction, I'm sure. But when the trailer came out for Egomaniac, and
Mhm.
you were there, I was like, oh my gosh, it's a crossover! Like,
Yeah.
it was exciting. Did you have a similar reaction when you saw the trailer?
Me?
Oh, I
Wait,
was
who's
to Mohat.
what?
Right, to me.
Like finally, because
Yes.
I would imagine when you shot the scene. Sorry for not specifying.
Yeah.
When you shot the scenes, you're like, okay, that was cool. But knowing Radul, like he's gonna chop it up, however he wants. So what was it like finally seeing that footage?
Yeah, I mean, it was very interesting. I feel like I really like I've finally like seen myself in someone else's film, and it's like a very like
Mhm.
holy shit moment where it's like, huh, so this is how like literally every other person around me feels like when they see themselves on a film, and there were moments where I was like, oh, like my acting could have been better there, I could have done that better, but like yeah, I think it's quite cool to be in someone else's project. And when I watched the trailer and I saw myself in it, I was actually quite surprised because one of my philosophies with sort of marketing is I try to show very little. So, like for example, I never show like I have this philosophy where I cannot show the opening scene of my film, and I cannot show the final scene of my film, right? And I'm always like with the marketing of Void Man, I want to like really like redirect and like every single film I make, like you will never ever see the opening scene of it in any kind of trailer because I want when you like first sit down to watch a film, I want you to be like kind of blindsided and really like taken by the opening. But in Riddle's trailer, I am in it, and I am also in the opening scene of the film very briefly, and so I was like quite surprised to see that, and we were talking about it. I was like, oh, I was surprised that like you showed me your like you showed the opening scene. He was like, oh, like I'm not trying to make like an artistic trailer. Like I'm trying to like make something that's like commercially viable and that like people will see. And like the Egomaniac trailer is making like insane views, so I think it's working. And I think like he's trying to like build this sense of scope and scale with the marketing. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
What's so we're talking about marketing. Do you have kind of when your movie's coming out, how do you market or how do you advertise it? Because I feel like every folk filmmaker is a little different in how they go about it.
Oh,
Yeah.
and adding on to that really quick before I forget, what did you think of the Quantumania Ant-Man and the Wasp trailer? Because I know that must have felt very similar.
Yes, yeah. I'll answer Ethan's question first. So my philosophy with marketing is, well, I'm the type of person who likes to keep things really close to the chest, right? So like I don't want to reveal anything till like I absolutely have to.
Mhm.
So the first trailer for Void Man came out, I believe it was like June of 2021. It was very, very, very vague. It pretty much gives you nothing. Even the second trailer pretty much gives you nothing. It's just meant to be like shots of the film. I didn't want to like reveal anything, right? Like
Yeah.
the way I thought of it, I was like, look, the people who are gonna watch it are gonna watch it regardless. The people who aren't just aren't. And it's like a 3 hour film, so it's like if you sit down to watch it, you're like making the willing commitment. And I don't know like how good a trailer like at this level can be. I mean, maybe that's like the wrong philosophy to have, but that's just like that was the mentality I had at the time. So I like to keep things really close to the chest. I think Riddle is a little different. He likes a bit of more of like a feedback loop. I think if you guys remember, he did actually release the this series Egomania. Like I think he released a couple minutes of Egomaniac each single day. So like day one he'd release like the opening scene, and then
Mhm.
day
Right.
two he'd release the same scene but with like a little changes. So, and he was telling me that he needs that like that feedback loop, and he needs to see people kind of like engaging with the product, and that really motivates him and drives him. For me, I want the experience of sitting down to watch the film to be this like incredible, unforgettable, like unexpected, memorable event, you know. And I don't want to ever like send out any like, you know, I don't want to reveal anything I don't need to. I try to be very restrained with my marketing, with my trailers. It does kind of bite me because it's like, you know, maybe not as much people are watching it. But even in my real life, my day to day, I don't watch any trailers for any film, right? Like I like to go into movies completely blind. I didn't watch a single trailer for The Batman. I didn't watch a single trailer for, you know, Avengers Endgame. I like to just sit down and just let the experience wash over me. So that's what I try to maintain when films like when, you know, that's the energy I try to maintain with my own film, which is like the energy I also maintain going into other people's films. And Jordan, your question, sorry, what was your question again? I've forgotten.
So did you see the Ant-Man and the Wasp
That's
preview?
right.
Because
yes.
It was upon looking back at your trailer for Soap Opera, I was like, oh my gosh, he beat Marvel by like 3 years.
Yeah, so if anyone doesn't know what Jordan is talking about, and so someone sent me this trailer, which is like, they're like, you need, like, I know you don't watch trailers, but you need to watch this. And I was like, okay. They play the Elton John song Yellow Brick Road in Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, which is the song I used for Soap Opera way back when in 2019 when I was 17. Yeah, I laughed and I was like, yeah, it's a good song. I can understand why they use this musical piece.
Do you have any tips on editing the trailer? Because it sounds like you like to play more like cool shots from the movie, but not give too much away. Are there any other tips you have for editing a trailer?
Yeah, so when I edit it, I have a couple like trailer philosophies. One, if you watch the trailers for Voidman and for Soap Opera, the sort of like character associations are never really clear. For example, like if you watch the trailer for Voidman, you would not know that Voidman and Sapphire / Angela are like in the same scene. That like in the trailer does not reveal that. Like a lot of the characters you don't know like who knows who or what is what kind of thing. So that's the thing I like to keep, is that like there's this element of like, you know, you can see all the pieces, but you don't see how they fit together, right? Another thing is I like to kind of misdirect. So like, you know, I like to kind of build the trailer up to like perhaps a scene that is not really like the climax of the film. You know, the climax of Voidman, I think the entire third act of Voidman is like, it's not even in the trailer of the film. And I wanted that third act to be like completely like, when you go into it, like after hour 2, like after the second hour going into the third, it's like you've literally like not a single frame you've seen, right? So it's like a completely fresh, you're like at this point where you're like, okay, everything that was revealed in the trailers I've seen up until this point. So now it's just like I have no idea like how this film is going to end or how it's going to conclude or where it's going to go, you know. And I also do like to put in a lot of deleted or like cut footage into the trailer, like, you know, just like to fill up some of the dead air, just to like, you know, push some of that misdirect. I think that was my philosophy with both Soap Opera and Voidman, is just like show some really cool shots, show like the kind of like the technical essence of the film, because that's kind of what, for me, that's what draws me into cinema as well, is like how it looks, right? Like I love the Batman, and I think part of the reason I love it is because of the way it looks, right? And if like Avengers Endgame was shot by Matt Reeves, maybe I would have like loved it even more. But I think my philosophy is actually changing. So when I do go into film 3 and I make my third film, I think I will market more of the actual like plot and the actual, you know, the mechanics of the film more to an audience, and like try to actually convince them to be invested rather than just show incredible cinematography. But like I do want my third film to like look like, I want it to be looking like incredible, like beautifully crisp.
Nice. Ethan, do you have any last questions before we move on to the next segment?
Let's do the next segment.
All right. So we've come to the part in our show where we talk about, what are you working on? What are you watching? You've kind of hinted that you're planning a film 3, but you don't know what it is yet. Can you share what you're doing now? Are you working on any film related stuff now?
Yeah, so well, after Voidman, which was just an incredibly like strenuous and like legitimately like painful experience, I put like everything into that film. I spent years on it. I think like I this entire year I've kind of just been like decompressing. I spent pretty much my entire 2021 in this room editing, right? So I think with this year I wanted to change that up. I wanted to like step outside, live life a little bit more. I'm actually moving to Amsterdam um next year in February, and I'm moving there for 1 year, and I'm going to be living there alone. That's for school, and that should be a very like life-changing experience. But basically the way I interpret my films, my filmmaking journey, is basically like, I live a life, and then I reflect on the life I've lived, and then I translate that into a film, right? So I think Voidman is it's a very introspective film with myself, and it's, I pull a lot from my life experience, and I put that into that film. I think the exact same thing will happen with film 3. I think I've learned a lot of lessons this year, and I've lived a very interesting life this year. And I think the following year as well, the next year will be like very formative, maybe like one of the single most formative years of my life. And I think I am in the process of kind of learning and living. And then I think when I come back, or maybe a year after I come back, I will like sit down, introspect, reflect, and then think, okay, how can I translate that into this? But right now, for whatever reason, my head is in this black and white world, right? Like I keep picturing this I keep picturing these black and white images. I don't know why, but I think my third film will be in black and white. And I think like I don't usually like talk about things before they're even like conceptualized, but I got to give you guys something. But like I think the third film will be in black and white. Ethan, I'm sure you probably have some tips because you did the bell rings in black and white.
You can't mess up black and white. That's all I'll say.
Yeah,
it's so good.
That's another thing, is that like I'm always trying to push myself with my films, so I always want the films to obviously be better and to be a more of a technical achievement, right? And also obviously a narrative achievement. But the narrative thing, it's like that's on you, like that's like you kind of just have to like you can do that if you really put your mind to it. But the technical aspect, I think black and white, you can get really creative. So right now, for me, film 3 in my head, it's like a film that takes place only at nighttime. It's in black and white, and it's like this noir, maybe investigative film that's like quite dark and dense and descending and spiraling. Yeah, I don't know why. I just feel like, and I think I also do interpret soap opera of Voidman and this third ambiguous film as like a trilogy of films, right? So I think if you watch soap opera and you watch Voidman, there are certainly like themes that kind of carry over, and they're in conversation with one another. I think this third film will kind of like wrap up a lot of the themes and a lot of the ideas, or it will kind of be a sequel to these two films, and it'll kind of be like the final building point, building off point. But yeah, that's kind of I'm not working on anything, and I have no like immediate plans to work on anything. But I definitely will make a third feature film. 'Cause, I'm a filmmaker, and like it's what I love doing, and I definitely will make a third one. I think it will take a bit of time, but I do like to build a bit of hype. I like to take my time with these things, and when I finally do release a project, I want it to be like an event. I want it to be like something that is memorable, and I want it to be an experience. So yeah, that's just where my head's at with my third film.
Damn. So we got to wait a long time for your next movie.
Yeah, you might. Yeah, but trust me, like when it comes out, it will be worth it.
It'll be worth it. That's great.
Amsterdam. That's gonna be a cool location if you get to film out there, man.
Oh yeah. I definitely. I might even shoot. Who knows? My third film might be shot in Amsterdam.
That'd be a pretty good spot in black and white. I'll just say that.
Yeah,
that's true.
Yeah. Can I ask? Are you going to school there for filmmaking, or is there a specific program you're doing over there?
Yeah, so I currently go to university for both screen production and international studies, right? So like learning about like the way the world works. I'm going to Amsterdam for the like international studies component of the degree. So I'm not really
Gotcha.
going there for filmmaking. But I do also think film school is kind of like a little bit of a waste of time. I mean, like I think it can be effective, but I definitely don't think I need to be going to film school. Like I shot soap opera and Void Man before I even went to film school. Like I even
Hmm.
had a single day of film school. So I think for some people they definitely make it work and it's very beneficial. But I think just for me and the way I learn, I don't think I necessarily need it. But I do like value kind of education and university. And so if I am going to go to university, I think I should at least do some film courses and study film a little bit alongside
Mhm.
my other thing. Um, but yeah, it is just the international studies component.
Nice.
That's awesome.
Nice.
Yeah. That brings us into our next part of the podcast, which is what are you watching? What movies are you checking out? What have you seen recently? Yeah.
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 Well, I just watched Egomaniac. We did talk about that. I'm honestly, I don't know why. I think it's just because it's towards the end of the year. I'm just watching the classics, you know. So Christmas Day, I watched The Godfather. Last night, I rewatched Pulp Fiction. I think I might I think I'm gonna watch Goodfellas tonight. I don't know why, but I'm just in the mood of just going back through the classics and just watching like some of the greatest films of all time. Just because I think this year, I spent a whole year kind of like working on Void Man. I think this year I like my movie watching habits were like really bad. I didn't watch a lot of films this year, which is like I like at the beginning of the year I actually bought like a year-long subscription to like Disney Plus, Netflix, Amazon Prime, the Criterion Collection movie. I like was like planning to like spend like every single day of this year just sitting and watching films, but I realized that like that just wasn't going to happen because I'd done that. I'd been working on a film for like 2.5 years, so I needed a break from cinema, and I think I've like
Mhm.
taken a year-long break from it, and I've just done some other stuff, but I think is healthy. I don't think like you should attribute all your time to one thing because you can get lost in it. Its breaks are good. I've taken a break and now I'm just going back through the classics. I'm watching, some of the greatest films of all time. I'm probably going to watch, Godfather Part 2 soon and just keep rewatching like the classics and then, uh, you know, go on from there. But yeah, I watched Egomaniac this morning and I watched Pulp Fiction last night and I'm in the sort of inspiration stage of the development process of film three. So, when you're working on a film but you're like feeling really inspired and you watch a film and you're like, oh, I'm definitely going to do that in my next project. I'm definitely going to
Mhm.
feel that and use that. That's like where I'm at. So I was watching Pulp Fiction last night. I was thinking like, oh, I'm definitely going to use some of the things Tarantino's playing around with here and put it into my third film. But yeah.
Nice.
Great.
I have to make a recommendation. I don't know if you've seen this, but if we're talking black and white movies, this is one of the top most beautiful black and white movies ever. Have you seen Night of the Hunter?
I have not, but it is on my watch list. I'm definitely going to watch it. Yeah.
That one has some gorgeous black and white cinematography. So
Yeah.
if you need black and white inspiration, that's a really good one. Yeah.
Jordan made me watch it before the bell rings.
Mhm.
Oh, very nice. I would
Yeah.
definitely watch Night of the Hunter. Yeah. One
Yeah.
of my
It's
favorite
very
black
good.
and white one of my favorite black and white films is Ivan's Childhood, which is Andrei
Yeah.
Tarkovsky's very first film,
Yeah.
made in like
Mm.
I think the 60s or the 50s, but just an incredible film. I think it might have been 1954. Very good
Yeah.
film.
And that's his most probably his most accessible one too.
Yeah, it
Like because
is.
all
Yeah,
his movies are very slow, very drawn out. That one is
yeah,
actually pretty, I mean, pretty standard narrative
yeah.
compared to his
It's
other
a
ones.
very pulpy. It has like a good pace. It's a very good film.
Yeah. Yeah. Uh Ethan, we haven't checked in a while. What have you been watching? I'm curious.
What have I been watching? This is what I've been watching, but I got The Lighthouse for Christmas, which I'm really happy about finally.
Really.
So yeah, I didn't own a copy of it yet. So
You've
that was
never
a
wait,
good one.
have you never seen The Lighthouse?
Oh no, I've seen it tons of times.
Okay, cool.
I
Because I
stole
was
from
gonna
that
say
movie
like
so much to make the
there's
bell
there's
rings.
literally no way this man makes the bell rings without
Yeah.
seeing The Lighthouse. Like that
Oh
would be the
yeah.
most insane. Yeah,
Yeah, I love that movie. So Sarah and I need to watch it soon because she hasn't seen it all the way through. So trying to pull up here and see what I've watched. Sarah's been watching Game of Thrones, and she'll watch it on her laptop when she's working, and usually I'll be at my desk working and I can see it. So I'll like be watching over her shoulder Game of Thrones. And so she watched like the end of the series last night. So I also watched the end of the series last night. I actually like totally watched the last episode, like just like over her shoulder. So I wanted to see how it ended because I didn't really know.
Yeah.
So I watched the end of Game of Thrones, which was pretty fun actually. For having not seen much of it. Yeah. And I don't think I've watched much else besides what we've checked in on the last time. So I've watched Doctor Sleep recently and rewatched The Green Knight recently, but that's about it. I don't know. I think I've been behind. I feel like I've watched something else recently, but it's just not coming to me. So I've been bad.
Right.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah. What about you, Jordan?
Well, I was telling you guys before we started, I just saw Puss in Boots, the new Puss in Boots.
Yeah.
Which I had not seen prior to us making our, favorite movies of last year list kind of thing. But that would definitely be on there. That was a really beautiful movie. I won't spoil anything, but because it's like second Puss in Boots movie. It's like the sixth Shrek universe movie. I was excited, but I wasn't like super duper excited.
So is it like canon in the Shrek universe?
Oh yeah, it's canon.
Nice.
Very, very.
Nice.
It blew me away. Like just all the emotions are right in that one. Gorgeous animation style. They changed up the animation style. It doesn't look like Shrek or Puss in Boots. Like they made it a little bit more stylized, like a little more graphic.
I like it.
But yeah, it's up there like with Spider-Verse. Like it's very similar in tone and style and mood to Spider-Verse in a way.
Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse is my single favorite animated film of all time.
It's so good. It's not as flashy and like glitchy, but it's definitely in terms of just pure energy and just creativity. It's really good. It's comparable.
Awesome.
Yeah.
But yeah. Thank you so much for stopping by and interviewing.
No worries. Thank you so much for having me.
We are so excited for whatever you have in store next. Do you have any, plugs? Is there anything you'd like to plug or let the people know where they can find you on Twitter, on social media, on YouTube or wherever?
Yes, you can find me on Twitter at Mohit Subedi. Same as YouTube, Mohit Subedi, basically MOHITSUBEDI. Just put those letters in succession and you will be able to find me in most places. Like I said, I've made 2 feature films, Soap Opera and Void Man. Even though Void Man is 3 hours long, I think it actually might be the more accessible of the 2 films. So if you do want to, but I do have like a couple of short films, and also I think we were talking about the making of Soap Opera video. I think that you've kind of reminded me like how like good that video is. I think I might after this I might tweet that out just because I feel like that's actually a great video for filmmakers to watch, because I think it does put you into the mindset of making your first feature. I was kind of playing a character in that video, like I was trying to be like really like a hyper and accentuated, but I think I do definitely make like a lot of good points there, and I provide some good insight. But yeah, you can basically find me on Twitter and at YouTube. YouTube is like my main thing. Twitter, I just make my my film declarations and my film tweets, and then I just delete them a couple days later when they don't do the numbers.
Yeah. Well,
thank you guys.
Thank you
guys so much for having me.
Yeah, this was great. We can't wait to chat with you again.